Greetings, this is Rosalind Parks with National Network View. On tonight's show, NNV contributor Brian E. Muhammad will discuss the UN General Assembly commemorative meeting acknowledging victims of the transatlantic slave trade and the injustices that still exist. Later in the show, we will also discuss some additional information about the slave trade. And finally, due to a scheduling conflict, King Randall I is unable to join us this evening. We are working to reschedule the interview, and we will be speaking with him very soon. Before we delve into the top news, let's do a recap on the current events we've covered this week. On yesterday's broadcast, Sister Charlene Muhammad discussed how the freedom of speech is being denied to those who speak out about the dangers of COVID vaccines, including Attorney Kennedy of the Children's Health Defense Organization. Now, would you say that the government and the media are waging an attack on constitutional rights and freedoms of speech?
Well, yes, I will say what Attorney Robert F. Kennedy, who is the chair and he's the chief legal counsel for Children's Health Defense, has told me, as well as the another counsel with his organization, that this is definitely attack on freedom of speech. And once that's gone, then all of the other rights are stripped away. But how can you say that people who are voicing concerns, they say, critics argue, about what's injuring people? How can you say that they have no right to say that and shut out those voices? The ultimate end is, again, depopulation.
Dr. Akili updated us on the new strain of the COVID virus that is spreading across the United States, the new wave of COVID infections, and the benefits of the sun as a natural immune booster. What has your research of this vaccine led you to conclude so far?
Well, public statements like that lady that we just heard are really, to me, statements that don't really have merit. Because for somebody to say that the vaccine is the reason why numbers are going down in the UK, there aren't any there is no evidence that can purport her claim. There was a downturn in most areas of the world outside of the United States before vaccines became available. The United States was really one of the few countries that were still on a high rise of the numbers. So to say that vaccines have caused a lower infection rate, I think is probably a little bordering on not telling the truth from my experience and research.
Netfa Freeman of the Black Alliance for Peace updated us on the protests in Haiti, the interventionism of the United States, United Nations, and Organizations of American States into Haiti and other neo-colonized countries. The Haitian people's right to national sovereignty must be respected. Is the Haitian president Jovenel Moise's refusal to step down disrespecting the Haitian people's right to sovereignty?
Well, I mean, absolutely it is. There's thousands of people, hundreds of thousands of people in the street protesting Jovenel Moise. And so whenever the people aren't able to exercise and have what they want in terms of leadership, in terms of government, in terms of policies, then that means that they don't have any sovereignty. Not to mention the fact that the Jovenel Moise represents the interests of the West. He is like the person before him, Michel Martelly. They have been handpicked by the United States, by the U.S. pretty much, but all the Western powers, and so without, as long as the people can't get their choice in terms of being exercise democratic rights to voting on people, representatives, and policies, then that's a breach of the sovereignty of the people.
On yesterday's show, our Dr. Abdul Halim Muhammad and Dr. Assad El-Malik discussed the Derek Chauvin murder trial, post-traumatic slave syndrome, and the lack of intervention to prevent George Floyd's murder.
If Derek Chauvin is found guilty or he's found innocent, from your perspective, what would be the impact of the verdict? If he's found guilty, how would that impact Black America? And what would probably be Black America's response? And if he's found innocent, how would that impact Black America?
I think obviously a guilty verdict will serve the benefits of justice, and we'll be able to say that justice was achieved and delivered in that case. However, I'm not expecting a guilty verdict. I'm expecting either a hung jury or acquittal. And I'm sure that we remember this, the summer activities of the protest. I'm sure we'll see a lot of protest. I'm sure we'll see a lot of lofty speeches from politicians and different members of our community. But maybe I'm cynical, but I don't believe anything will change in our psyche, nor will it change in theirs.
Dr. Abdul Halim Muhammad and Dr. Asad El Malik also discussed the music industry's controversial music content and the merchandising of industry artists that has been going on for decades.
Candace Owens, and people agree with her, disagree with her, but one of the things that she said was that online to Lil Nas X was that he was being used by these corporations and these big execs to basically destroy the minds of children. Was she right in that assessment, or is she off basis?
Well, Black masculinity has been under attack since our feet hit the shores of North America, with buck breaking, lynching, police brutality, the propaganda in the media that makes us look like a beast. When you look at the Birth of a Nation movie by D.W. Griffith, that we're incompetent, we're incapable, we're unqualified to hold public office, and all we want to do is sleep with a white woman. And all of this, and then we look at the mass incarceration. We're people, especially Black men, that are endangered species. So so you can again go and look at just the whole atmosphere environment that's being created now about that we are the source of anti-Semitism, we're the source of misogyny, we're the source of anti-Asian hate, we're the source of all of the evils that embody America. But you know something, if you lift our tag in the back of our shirt, it won't say made in China, it'll say made in the USA.
Evanston, Illinois reparation plan provides some Black residents that were victims of discriminatory housing redlining with reparation payments.
Is it a mere symbolic gesture, or is this a good first step?
It's a step. I don't know if it's good, and I don't know if it's a first step. But if it involves land, now you got my attention as an urban planner. You have my attention. Because without land, this whole thing is about property. It's about land. Remember the 39 men, actually 40 signatures on the Constitution, but the 39 men that signed the Constitution of the United States, they were white male property owners. And they didn't even want white men that didn't own property to vote. It's about land. So we got to have land in order to feed, clothe, and shelter ourselves. It's a good start, but it doesn't end there. You can give somebody money, but if you don't educate them with the knowledge of self to do for self, then that land can be taken from them. That money can be taken from them. And if you give them land to feed, clothe, and shelter themselves, you got to give them the tools and implements and materials necessary to sustain themselves. And you do have to provide a measure of capital so that they're able to continue and perpetuate what it is that they're doing. So land, education, tools, equipment, material, and capital. But really, we need more. We need like 100 million acres just to start.
Sister Carmen Muhammad, inspirational fashion designer and founder of Al-Nisa Designs, modest style MGT apparel, has garnered international acclaim and awards during Torino Fashion Week.
How examples of how you have seen the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan be an advocate for the rights of women?
Every time he does a lecture and he is focusing on the value of the woman, the value of the mother, the value of the daughter, the beauty of the woman, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan does nothing but lift the woman up and inspires us to be women of God. Everything that he does is to build a better life for us. He understands who we are. He understands that we are that second self of God. And he tries every time he speaks to us to let us know that his love for us is so pure is so real, and that he is the protector over us, and he will continue to do that because he is constantly exalting the women.
Student Minister Donald Muhammad discussed the growing dissatisfaction with the U.S. government and their ongoing actions to affect voter participation.
How would you characterize the current racial atmosphere and political climate in the United States?
Well, you can always determine based on the progress of Black people. They has always tried to hold us back. Go all the way back to Black Wall Street in Tulsa. Go all the way back to changing. They are doing this in 43 states all over the United States right now, even in the Missouri. Missouri is what they call a red state. So therefore, they have changed a lot of the voter laws here as well. Also, in the city of St. Louis, they had a proposition called Prop D that took away the partisan political voting elections, and then they are nonpartisan now. So now there's a runoff. Even when two people win, the first two that wins in a primary has to do a runoff now. All of this is designed to stop Black rule, my brother.
NNV contributor Charles Muhammad discussed the science of fasting, describing its benefits to cleanse the body of impurities, lower blood sugar, and improve health.
So what are some other benefits, besides curing sickness and obviously weight loss?
Well, there's another saying that if you free the mind, the body will follow. So when you fast, you're basically renewing your cellular structure of your body, and you're cleaning the body. And also, you are allowing one of the most important organs in your body to do its job. That's the liver. And the liver begins a process called ketosis. Now, ketosis is when your body begins to take out the fats of the body and then bring it into the liver, and the liver turns it into what are called ketones. And then the ketones are like straight right up to your brain. It's like fuel for the brain. And we as Muslim followers of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, we go through that process when we go fast during Ramadan, when we don't eat during the sunlight.
Tequila Muhammad gave us tips on food storage, disaster preparedness, and having an emergency evacuation plan in place for ourselves and our families.
So what should we have in a disaster preparedness plan that helps us in the event of evacuation?
Yes, sir. First and foremost, we all should have our go bags with us. A go bag is a bag that you basically put together for you and your family, each member of the family of your household, where you have enough items to last you for a bare minimum of 3 days, which includes food, clothing, some type of shelter that you're able to put on your back comfortably and be able to walk for long distance or periods of time. You also want to have those same storage containers in your car or at your workplace, as well as your children's schools if they're in school. And you want to make sure that you are preparing your family by having those evacuations, practicing without utilities to know how to cook or how to be able to survive without having heat, without having food, without being able to cook your food, and just practice with your family. Maybe do a camping thing where you all are turning your lights off and turning off the electricity just for that day to see how you all cope and survive during that time, as well as walking long periods of time with your backpack on to see how far off your family can make it during any disaster. So the biggest thing is properly preparing before the disaster strikes.
Abdul Haq updated us on the Newark Peace Agreement and the people standing together in solidarity against senseless violence and our open enemy.
It's a combination of several factors that's now encouraging our people to do more as it relates to being more actively involved, as it relates to not just my community, but our community. One of the major problems that we as a people face in our community is bystander apathy. It's called bystander apathy. When you see someone doing something, you feel since they have it, you don't have to participate. But I can see that North is inhaling the spirit of unity and cooperation and community, real community, not just the word, but community in practice. And we are implementing and instituting the principles that we have been given from giants like Marcus Garvey, Noble Drew Ali, the most honorable Elijah Muhammad, and the honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. So the teachings have always been here, but now it's time that we implement these teachings and all that they have given us. So I'm humbled and I'm honored to be a part of such a great initiative that's not just happening in the North, but in urban cities all throughout America. So all praise is due to Allah.
Let's pause for announcements from our sponsors. NNV Weekly contributor Brian E. Muhammad will join us to discuss the UN's acknowledgement of the slave trade. We'll be right back.
Be a part of the force that powers truth in journalism. Your support helps us to highlight solutions for a brighter tomorrow. Go to nnvnews.com/donate.
This is Sister Sajda Muhammad. We are proud to announce that the Sajda House commemorative Elijah coins are finally here. This priceless heirloom, made from recycled copper from the messenger's home, is now available at sajdahouse.com.
The hashtag Bank Black social media campaign made strides not only in revolutionizing how we bank, but also how we think. The movement inspired thousands of African Americans across the country to transfer or deposit millions of dollars into Black-owned banks. These are banks that will invest in urban communities, employ African Americans, support Black businesses, and inspire Black home ownership. This is a very proud moment for our culture as we are taking small, but significant, steps towards building Black power through Black wealth.
Please share your thoughts with us in the comment section below. Follow us on social media at NNV News, and please subscribe to our YouTube channel at National Network View. I am Anissa Muhammad with nnvnews.com.
The UN General Assembly held a commemorative meeting acknowledging the victims of enslavement in the transatlantic slave trade and injustices that still exist.
Slavery has existed in every corner of the globe. Africans enslaved fellow Africans long before the American colonists existed, and sadly, in many places around the world, slavery still exists today. As the scholar Isabel Wilkerson argues, humans in all contexts have ranked human value, pitting the presumed supremacy of one group against the presumed inferiority of others. In America, that takes many forms, chief among them our legacy of white supremacy. This year, the senseless killing of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and so many other Black Americans sparked a reckoning with racial justice, a movement that spread across the world. Black Lives Matter. And because Black Lives Matter, we need to dismantle white supremacy at every turn. This means looking at other kinds of hate too.
Joining us is NNV contributor Brian E. Muhammad. Greetings.
Good afternoon.
All right. In the recent article in the Final Call newspaper, it stated that as of 2016, over 40.3 million people were estimated to have been enslaved in modern forms, 71% of whom are women and girls. Are the governments, is the government creating conditions for inhumane treatment and modern day slavery to continue to exist?
Oh, yes. You know, Rosalind, the governments of today, their culpability is in not eradicating inequality, exploitation, and negative capitalism, which are primary causes of the conditions that that lead people into being vulnerable for, being exploited. I mean, when we talk about things like the underground sex trade, we talk about things like human trafficking. And by the way, worldwide, human trafficking draws $150 billion a year. And so there is a lot of incentive for people to exploit other people who are in these vulnerable conditions. But if the governments were more forthright in terms of taking care of the problems of poverty, of unemployment, of different conditions like that in their societies, then people would not be vulnerable for it. And, and to also, I just want to make a point on the fact that much of the human trafficking problem in the world is in these industrialized nations like the United States and the countries that make up the European Union. Now, with women, it's very unfortunate that women and girls are victimized the most, and it really adds to the need for right-thinking people to really put a focus on the protection and the respect of our women and our girls, because worldwide, they are the most vulnerable when it comes to this human trafficking or what they like to call modern slavery in today's world.
Right. Now, the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres said at a commemorative meeting of the General Assembly on the International Day of Remembrance of the Victims of the Slavery and Transatlantic Slave Trade that the ideas of white supremacy that underpinned it remain alive. What steps are the UN taking to tackle racism? What steps are they taking to tackle injustice and inequality, if any?
Yeah, the UN, it's a body of talkers. I'll put it that way. But just to its credit, the UN has set up a committee on the elimination of racial discrimination, which is a body of independent experts to monitor some of the proposals that come out of a lot of these discussions around this issue. But this body of people, the experts, these are not people who work for the United Nations. These are independent experts who lend their expertise to discussing the matter, to come up with solutions for the matter, But again, the UN, because of the way it is set up, it has not been effective. It has not been effective. So when we ask, well, what is the UN doing? I mean, the UN holds conferences and it holds more conferences. And what come out of those conferences are proposals for more conferences. And so it becomes a situation where it's talk, because there is never any real accountability in these nations to tackle the problem of exploitation. And if we look at it like this, Sister Rosalind, if look at the makeup of the United Nations. If the United Nations is saying modern slavery is a problem, exploitation is a problem, it must be eradicated. But then when you look at who makes up the United Nations, it's 196 countries that make up the General Assembly, but then you got 5 power nations that run that, and all of them especially the United States, France, England, or the United Kingdom, China, all of them have, these are 4 of the, worst cases of human rights abuses, And so how are you going to now be a collective to say we have a problem, but who's sitting at the table are the perpetrators of the problem in much of the world? It makes no sense. So and nobody can argue with us about this because of the fact that the UN has been in existence for 70 something years now. And in its charter, in the base of its making, is supposed to be the making of peace. But how many wars, how many conflicts, how many just since the 1940s to now that they have not been able to eradicate or solve in terms of the problems of the world? And it's the same thing with this, again, so-called modern slavery.
Now, with the modern day slavery, with the profitability of modern day slavery, I think you mentioned earlier, I believe the number was $150 billion market for what they're calling modern day slavery. With money being the driver and most of the industrialized nations being at the top of those lists, is an end to this foreseeable?
Well, I would say there's always an end to these things. I always reference, as I'm on the program every week, and I always reference the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. And he said something very key. When we look at these international bodies and we look at, the quest for justice in the world, he said that the justice is not going to come from the courts of this world. The UN, every nation, and it's written in the scriptures, in the Holy Quran, it's written that every nation will be judged by its own book. So when people take grievances to the United Nations, such as the grievance of human trafficking and the grievance of, racial injustice that is experienced heavy in the United States, of course, it's okay to take it there because it's making a record, it's putting it on record. But to think that the United Nations, or bodies of the United Nations, are going to solve the issue of justice, no, we're pipe dreaming. If we believe that, it will not happen. The Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan said that justice will come from the God of justice. And that is who will answer the prayer of the downtrodden, the oppressed, the persecuted in the world. Now, some people may say, well, we're not religious, so I don't go for that. Well, I'm saying that as ancient Babylon fell and ancient Rome fell and the scripture of Egypt fell, America is all of that in one. It will fall if it does not, and this world, I would say, will fall if it does not change its own course of actions. So is there an end in sight? Yes, but it may not come from where we have been making our appeals to.
Good point. General Assembly President, the Secretary General, Mr. Gutierrez, acknowledged that the immense contributions that the enslaved have brought to the culture, education, and economies is a big part of our world today. In what ways has the U.S. and other European nations benefited from slave labor, benefited from colonization, and even stolen lands?
There's a book that the Nation of Islam research team put together called How the White Man Got So Rich. And then there's another book that was out for many years called How Europe Underdeveloped Africa. See, these books are talking about the exploitation and how that was done. Now, when you look at slavery, the traditional slavery as we know it, of what happened to our people, if you take a land from our indigenous brothers and sisters, and then you go in Africa and you bring Africans and enslave Africans, and they work for free for 300 years, right? That will put you in a very good position financially if you're the enslaver.
Brother Brian, we have to take a really quick break. So we'll be right back. Let's pause for some announcements from our sponsors. We'll be right back.
Be a part of the force that powers truth in journalism. Go to nnvnews.com/donate.
Thank you for tuning in to NNV News. Please share your thoughts with us in the comments section below. Follow us on social media at NNV News, and please subscribe to our YouTube channel, National Network View. This is Clifton Muhammad with nnvnews.com.
Worldwide, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Download the Final Call Radio app and take us everywhere. On your phone, on your computer, on your tablet, on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. You can also log on to finalcall.com and click the Listen Live button, or finalcallradio.com. Final Call Radio, the official voice of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan and the Nation of Islam.
This is Sister Sajda Muhammad. We are proud to announce that the Sajda House commemorative Elijah coins are finally here. As we renovate and restore the former home of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad, we have recycled the old copper gutters and downspouts and created a 1-ounce 39mm coin made of 100% pure copper. Each coin is professionally graded and has its own barcode and registration number. This priceless heirloom, made from recycled copper from the messenger's home, is now available at sajdahouse.com.
The Nubian Leadership Circle held its all-virtual National Black Leadership Summit 2 on April 3rd, 2021. The Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan spoke during the virtual event about building our own society.
I'm very honored to be with you once again, pursuing the creation of our own Black nation. That's a noble objective that is exactly what God wants us to do. We have become a nation within a nation. But as a nation within a nation, we have numbers. We get out of this economy $1.2 or $3 trillion a year. But we don't have earth that we can call our own. So pursuing the creation of our own Black nation starts with a vision. What do we have in our heads and in our hearts?
To speak more on this, we're bringing back Brother Brian. Thank you for joining us again, Brother Brian, to speak on this. All right.
Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
During an online event, headline "Still We Rise," the head of the UN Population Fund, Natalia Kanem, stressed that ending racism, the legacy of enslavement, is a global imperative for justice. So earlier we were speaking on this, but your perspective, does the UN support reparations for ancestors of enslaved Americans as a means of reparatory justice and ending racism?
Well, it took a vote that it says it does. But the problem, as we said earlier, that implementation. See, we can easily say that America, you must pay, or you must, deal with the problem that you caused by bringing Africans and enslaving them, But again, the UN does not have the mechanisms to bring that into fruition. Look at who's on the Security Council. The United States, which brought us into slavery, the best that is happening right now in the United States where even reparation is concerned is the Congress are now talking about, we must even vote to see if we will do a study of it. Well, what is there to study? When you got the condition, look at the condition. Black people are out of our damn minds because of what happened to us in slavery as a wrecked and a robbed people mentally and spiritually. We don't even know our names. They took away our names. They took away our language. They took away our culture. They took away our relationship with our God and replaced it with something that they put in us that have never served us but made us a better tool of service to them, even in this world. So in this day and time. So we talk about reparations. How is the United Nations going to push up on the United States and say, take care of that? And America has veto power in the Security Council. America will deny it. I don't care what Joe Biden says about repaying Black America for saving his campaign and voting him into power and then giving us what he says is a vice president from among us. No, hell no. That is not enough, because when it comes to dealing with the problem that we have incurred to fix the reparatory justice is repairing the damage. America does not have enough money to take care of that problem. They'd have to give up their country. So the United Nations, yes, acknowledge that, reparations is something that needs to be done. But the United Nations can't push up on America. They cannot push up on England. They cannot push up on those who will be charged with what they have done to us. So stop playing.
Right. What would one action be that the United Nations or even the United States could take toward reparatory injustice?
Yeah, well, they can start with giving us a state or several states that we can have a country that we can call our own. They can start with, stop hindering us from having, a free, being free indeed. not just in word, but in deed. If they want to do something, give us stop hindering us from having a complete freedom if they want to do something. But again, they don't have the political will to do that. They don't have the will, nor does the United Nations, forget about it. They don't have the testicular fortitude to even approach really fixing the problem and doing what is necessary to heal what has been done to us.
Yeah.
So there's
Oh, go ahead.
No, I'm saying that there's a lot that they can do, but they don't have the will to do it. And that's why, again, referencing the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan and the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad, that's why we're taught that God himself said he would come and he would bring out the people who have been enslaved for 400 years and bring them out with great substance. And when he comes to establish a universal government, not the 197th nation in that cesspool called the United Nations. One government of peace, where we all can live in peace together. That's what he comes to do. Because the world of Satan will not fix it. The only way the United Nations can fix the problem, it will cause Satan to cast out Satan. And they are not going to cast out one another.
That's right. Is the Ark of Return, which is a memorial in New York, intended as a memorial to the victims of enslavement, or is it a monument to the legacy of slavery and the transatlantic slave trade?
It's both. When they established it, in fact, the brother who was the architect and the designer of it was a brother of Haitian descent. And it was to recognize both. But here's the problem. Again, the United Nations, that symbol, we can have all the symbols that we can have to make us remember and make us never forget. Well, hell, the Jews said never again when it came to the Holocaust, but the UN backed that up by stealing land from the Palestinians and giving the Jews land that they can call their own. Now, that was a gangster move that they should not have done. But the point is, it wasn't just a symbol, never again. So that monument is a symbol. How we remember our situation? By looking at the conditions in the hood every day. When you look at, again, how crazy we are as a people, we didn't make ourselves crazy. We incurred craziness from the crazy of crazies called the white man, who has been a skunk on our planet. And until the skunk is eradicated, then we can eradicate the condition that we are in. Now, God has he's going to fix it. Now, we're being healed in the midst of our enemies. We are. But the total eradication will not take place until the troublemaker is removed off of our planet. And that's real.
Now, very quickly, Brother Brian, I want to ask you one final question. In a recent article in the Final Call newspaper, the minister spoke about nation building. What does that mean for the descendants of the transatlantic slave trade?
Well, the minister, and I will tell everybody to please go and look at the Black Leadership Summit on part 2 that he spoke at, that he addressed. That means that we have to have a world that is for ourselves and by ourselves. That means a world of education, a world of knowledge, a world of art and culture, but it's something that we define. Right now, our enemy have defined these expressions for us. I don't care how we cut it. If you're in the music business, that's not your business. That's the business that you're in. And a lot of brothers are trying to make independent moves, which is good, but don't be deceived until you come totally independent, where you have free reign of your own expression and your own mind and your own heart. So this is what we're talking about, but it is on land that we can call our own. It is not just a neighborhood. It can start by a neighborhood of us, but no, we're talking about a land that we can call our own, where we will rule and we will dictate and we will live by what we desire to do that's best for us. And we will have the wherewithal to protect that. Because there ain't no need talking about that if we don't also have the ways and means to protect that. You see, because we're not going to bring in the sex trade into our world. We're not going to bring in all these things that are damaging to the world that we live in and that we are victimized by into our world. We can fix that. So it's a world that is based on freedom, justice, equality, and righteousness.
Thank you so much.
Universal government of peace.
Right. Thank you for joining us, and thank you for staying on to discuss a little further about the transatlantic slave trade and the potential of reparatory justice. Let's pause for announcements from our sponsors. We'll be right back.
Be a part of the force that powers truth in journalism. Your support helps us to highlight solutions for a brighter tomorrow. Go to nnvnews.com/donate.
Asiatic Minds, online education, helping our children to discover their God-given skills, gifts, talents, and passion that will allow them to see their greatness, as well as the greatness of our people, and upon discovering that greatness, infusing them with the desire to use it for the betterment of themselves, their families, our people, and the world. Call now, 502-219-4848. This week's headline for the Final Call cover story is entitled, Under the Shadow of Death. The trial of Derek Chauvin, the ex-police officer and accused murderer of George Floyd, has begun, giving exposure to grief, loss, and the terror Black people continue to suffer with no guarantee of justice. This FCM Volume Number 27 edition features the middle page article by the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, the message to the Nubian Leadership Circle entitled, Building a Nation of Our Own. To read more, subscribe to finalcalldigital.com and tune in to the all-new Final Call Radio. This is the nnvnews.com Final Call Cover Report.
Thank you for joining us today and for tuning into NNV News. Please share your thoughts with us in the comment section below. Follow us on social media at NNV News, and please subscribe to our YouTube channel, National Network View. This is Rosalind Parks with National Network View News. Good night.
Be a part of the force that powers truth in journalism. Go to nnvnews.com/donate.